Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Refinitiv Perspectives Live 24-hour special. For this 17th episode today, we welcome Kevin Jackson, who is CEO of GC GlobalNet and part of our Refinitiv Social 100. So, getting into it, we're going to be looking at the cybersecurity and digital transformation in 2021. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, how you doing, Caroline? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. So, getting right into it, in 2020, business went fully virtual. How can organizations better protect their data now that most business is being conducted from individual homes?
Well, that's a great question. And some people would say that I thought we took care of our cybersecurity. But to be honest, most organizations had sort of centralized a thought of centralized control with respect to their information and data. And cybersecurity hygiene was kind of lax, right? And in different organizations within the company would have different policies, different levels of protection established. And that really provided no consistency. And when the pandemic hit and everybody had to basically stay home and work from home, two things happened. First of all, they had to start using their own systems, their own computers, their own personal smartphones, even. And second, it was impossible for the organizations to monitor the network that they were using. I mean, people were using public wide area networks, they were using their own home wireless networks. And that cybersecurity hygiene, basic stuff like making sure you had secure passwords, that you rotated your passwords, that you would use approved browsers. There was really no way of seeing or understanding what people were using, especially when they were on their own personal devices. The second thing is that corporate policies, didn't really envision the use of everyone using their own, personal devices. So it's really important for organizations to review their policies with the eye to people working just about anywhere. I recently did a project where I was working from an Airstream RV, recreational vehicle. And the concept was no matter where you are, you could do your work. And that's really how IT organizations and enterprises have to think. They need to enable their employees to literally be able to work from anywhere, but review the policies, review how people can use their own personal devices or issue devices that can be used from home. That concept that only certain people will need to work remotely and others will never have to do that is just out the window.
Completely understand. And going off of that, I mean, do you see people necessarily wanting to go back to the office, or do you see, the term is so overused, but is this the new normal? Do we need to figure out how to protect the data, how to go forward with a fully virtual office?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no going back.
Mhm.
You're in the new normal, so you need to determine how to best operate in this virtual world. The Before, the physical world was primary. Now it's really the virtual world is primary in business, and that really will permeate every business process that an organization has. One of the key components of business is trust. And in the past, people have built trust in essentially two ways. The first is mutual experiences. That's why you may take your your colleague or your customer to a sporting event. You may go out for dinner. This mutual experience, a physical experience, gives each of the people sort of an idea of how that other person is, if that person is trustworthy. The second component of building trust is really time. It takes time to build physical trust. And that time affects the sales cycle and the buy cycle and the business cycle. Now, what do you do when you don't have that physical interaction? And that's where we are right now. You need to figure out some other way of building trust. Now, what we believe it's going to be, what it's turning out to be, is information and data. You need to have effective and efficient ways of collecting data on your business partners. You have to really identify which business partners are critical to which of business processes. Because you also have to feel comfortable, build trust in your ability to exchange data with your business partners and across your entire business ecosystem.
Of
So,
course.
yeah, so once again, it is critical for you to review your cybersecurity policies as part of your partner policies and contracts. You need to be able to look at their IT networks, their cybersecurity policies, and ensure that they are consistent with your own. And this really extends when, as you're working in this virtual world, you're also consuming more and more cloud services.
Mm-hmm.
So the cloud service providers that you will use more of them, and you will have to leverage the security controls that are provided by those cloud service providers. And you may not realize, but they're different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
Go
and
ahead.
you talk about cloud, but when using that, how do you protect your internal communications from these attacks? You talk about collecting data, but how do we protect that data? Especially making sure in exchange with business ecosystem.
Well, in the past, when we were running our own data centers, um, we would do what's known as an infrastructure centric security model, where we would keep attackers off of our networks, off of our internal systems. And I always like to call it a moat and castle approach to cybersecurity. You build high enough walls and wide enough moats to keep all the bad people out, and only the good people are inside. And you trust the good people, right? Well, there is no such thing as inside in the virtual world. So you can no longer rely on this infrastructure centric model, this idea of protecting your IT infrastructure. You need to transition to a data centric security model. And that means you have to understand and know your data, know the difference between critical data and okay data, and data that needs to be protected under the various privacy and data protection rules. And the second thing is that you need to put security controls in place that travel with the data, no matter where it goes. That could include using encryption in a much broader manner, using obfuscation, maybe anonymization of data. But the selected control is driven by how the data is used. And you can't just say all data is the same. So it's a real, I guess, shock to the system that you have to
Mm-hmm.
really think about the data, how you're using it, and categorize it, classify it in the most appropriate way. And an extension of that is that it's your employees, it's your staff that will have the responsibility for recognizing the data, classifying the data, and ensuring that the appropriate protections are in place.
Of course. And going off of that, last year, obviously, we all experienced a global physical supply chain meltdown. So, how can organizations prevent a similar catastrophe in the data supply chain of the virtual world?
So, do you still have your pile of toilet paper in the corner? Well,
Got rid of it now.
well, the global physical supply chain meltdown was mostly due to the fact that we relied on these physical processes. And as I said before, when you can't execute on these traditional physical processes, you need to have a different virtual process. And in order to ensure trust, you also have to actively manage your data supply chain, because every physical supply chain has a data supply chain. And 90% of that supply chain meltdown was the inability of suppliers and consumers to exchange information, like how much toilet paper do you need this week, right? And there was no timely way of exchanging that information because the processes use physical connections. So we need to have a online, verifiable, secure way of exchanging information and data in a timely and reliable fashion. This is one area where blockchain could really improve the overall supply chain process. The issue about the internet is that there is no agreed process for verifying the data. I mean, if you have a question and you put it in a search engine, you'll get 15, 16 different answers. Which answer is correct? Some answers came from 10 years ago. Others came from 10 minutes ago. Some have came from experts. Some, to be honest, just come from loony people, right? So how do you know the pedigree of the information? How do you know how often the information has been changed? How do you know if information is actually verified? And when you're talking about supply chain, you need all three. So blockchain applied to the information regarding products and services that are being delivered and consumed can go a long way towards managing the data supply chain, which will enhance the physical supply chain. The other area is software. When you're operating in the virtual world, all of your business processes are executed using software. And there again, you need to understand the pedigree of the software. What different components are in that software? Many times it's open source. And sometimes the components in the software package you use, it may have been introduced 3, 4, 5 layers back in the software supply chain. So, and we saw the effects of not understanding your supply chain, not being able to verify your software supply chain with the global solar winds hack. That was actually at the end of the supply chain, the software supply chain I'm talking about. It was software delivered by the vendor, but 2, 3, 4 layers back, there was some malware introduced. So here again, you could use blockchain to manage, verify the pedigree of your software. So by using technologies like blockchain to verify data and information and to verify software and its pedigree, you can actually do a lot to protect the virtual supply chain.
So it really sounds like, from what you're saying, the main thing that we might see in 2021 is just a ramp up of the use of blockchain, and then also making sure that there's trust even in the virtual world, and that we can verify and make sure that our data is protected. So it's been such a great conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can read a report on third-party risk by scanning the code or clicking the link on the screen now. As always, thank you for joining us, and be sure to stay tuned for the next episode on the hour, which will be about the transformation of trading. See you in an hour.